She was scrolling through her dating app at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, exhausted from another 16-hour day of juggling her job as a nurse and raising her 10-year-old daughter alone. 3 years had passed since her divorce, and the loneliness was eating her alive. That's when the message appeared, from a man whose profile picture showed kind eyes and a gentle smile. "You have the most genuine smile I've ever seen," it read. "I'd love to get to know the woman behind it." 6 months later, that same message would become the first link in a chain that nearly destroyed her life completely. What started as sweet late-night conversations about dreams and fears turned into blackmail, public humiliation, and a suicide attempt that her daughter would witness firsthand. But what happened when the FBI finally caught her tormentor, and what they discovered about his other victims, will shock you to your core. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Rebecca Martinez was 31 years old when she decided to give love another chance. Working as a registered nurse at Denver General Hospital, she spent her days caring for others while her own heart remained carefully guarded behind walls built from the pain of her divorce. Her ex-husband Michael had left her for a younger woman when their daughter Sophia was just 7 years old, taking with him not just their marriage, but Rebecca's faith that she was worthy of being loved. The divorce settlement left her with their small house in Aurora, enough child support to cover the basics, and a mountain of self-doubt that seemed to grow taller with each passing lonely evening. Rebecca's days followed a relentless routine that left little room for romance or even friendship. Her shifts at the hospital were brutal, 12-hour stretches of monitoring patients, administering medications, and dealing with life and death situations that drained every ounce of emotional energy she possessed. She would come home to Sophia around 7:30 in the evening, help with homework while heating up whatever frozen dinner she could find in their freezer, supervise bath time, read bedtime stories, and then collapse on her living room couch with a glass of cheap wine and whatever mindless television show could distract her from the silence. The silence was the worst part, the absence of adult conversation, of shared laughter, of someone asking how her day went and actually caring about the answer. Sophia was Rebecca's world, but even the most devoted mother needs something beyond the love of her child. Rebecca found herself watching other couples at the grocery store, couples holding hands while they debated between different brands of cereal, couples who had someone to share the mundane moments of life with. She missed having someone to text during her lunch breaks, someone to call when she encountered a difficult patient, someone to curl up next to when the loneliness felt like it might consume her entirely. Her sister Carmen kept encouraging her to start dating again, but the thought terrified Rebecca more than any medical emergency she had ever faced. "You're still young, Rebecca," Carmen would say during their weekly phone calls. "You're beautiful, you're intelligent, you save lives for a living. Any man would be lucky to have you." But Rebecca couldn't see what Carmen saw. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman whose husband had chosen someone else, someone younger, prettier, more exciting. She saw stretch marks from pregnancy, worry lines around her eyes from working night shifts, and hands that were constantly dry from washing them dozens of times each day. She saw someone who had failed at marriage and was probably destined to fail at love again. But loneliness is a powerful motivator, and on a particularly difficult Tuesday evening in March, Rebecca found herself downloading a dating app. Sophia had cried herself to sleep after a phone call with her father got cancelled at the last minute. Again. And Rebecca sat in her daughter's bedroom long after the tears had stopped, wondering if she was enough. Enough as a mother, enough as a woman, enough as a human being to deserve happiness. The wine she had consumed with dinner made her brave enough to create a profile, choosing photos that showed her genuine smile and writing a bio that was honest without being desperate. "Single mom, nurse, believer that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness," she typed, then spent 20 minutes second-guessing every word before finally hitting publish. For the first week, Rebecca's experience was everything she had feared it would be. Men who clearly hadn't read her profile sent generic messages asking if she wanted to hook up. Others sent inappropriate photos within the first few exchanges or made crude comments about what they wanted to do to her body. She was about to delete the app and resign herself to a life of solitude when a message appeared that made her pause. Hi, Rebecca. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Your profile says you're a nurse, and I have such deep respect for people in the medical field. My name is David, and I'd love to learn more about what drives someone to dedicate their life to caring for others. David Thompson's profile indicated he was 35 years old, divorced with no children, and working as a freelance marketing consultant based in Seattle. His photos showed a handsome man with kind eyes and a warm smile, someone who looked like he could be trusted with important things. Unlike the other men who had messaged her, David asked thoughtful questions about her work, her interests, and her experiences as a single mother. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her as a complete person, rather than just viewing her as a potential conquest. Their first conversation lasted until nearly 2 a.m. David wanted to know everything: what had drawn her to nursing, what her typical day looked like, how she balanced the emotional demands of her job with raising a daughter alone. He listened without judgment when she told him about her divorce, offering gentle words of support without trying to fix her or minimize her pain. It sounds like you've been incredibly strong through some really difficult times, he texted. Sophia is lucky to have a mother who works so hard to provide for her and still has so much love to give. As days turned into weeks, David became a bright spot in Rebecca's routine. He would send her good morning texts that arrived just as her alarm went off, asking how she had slept and wishing her strength for whatever challenges the day might bring. During her lunch breaks, she would find messages asking about her patients, her co-workers, or simply checking if she had remembered to eat something healthy. In the evenings, after Sophia was in bed, they would have long phone conversations that stretched late into the night, talking about everything from their childhood memories to their hopes for the future. David seemed to understand the unique challenges of single parenthood in a way that surprised Rebecca. He asked thoughtful questions about Sophia's adjustment to the divorce, offered gentle suggestions when Rebecca shared her parenting struggles, and always remembered details about her daughter's school events or friend drama. "You're doing an amazing job with her," he would say during their nightly calls. "I can hear how much she means to you in your voice when you talk about her. She's going to grow up knowing what real love looks like because of how you care for her." What Rebecca didn't know was that every word of understanding, every gesture of kindness, every moment of seeming genuine connection was carefully calculated. The man she knew as David Thompson was actually Carlos Rivera, a 28-year-old from Phoenix who had turned romance scamming into a profitable business. He had studied the psychology of lonely single mothers like a scientist, learning exactly what they needed to hear to feel valued, understood, and loved. Carlos had dozens of fake profiles across multiple dating platforms, each one carefully crafted to appeal to a specific type of vulnerable woman, and he managed conversations with over 40 victims, simultaneously using a complex system of spreadsheets and automated responses. Carlos understood that successful romance scams weren't just about money. They were about emotional manipulation on a level so sophisticated that victims would willingly destroy their own lives to maintain the illusion of love. He had perfected the art of making women feel special while keeping them at just enough emotional distance to maintain their desperation for more contact. He knew exactly when to be supportive, when to be unavailable, when to share false vulnerabilities that would deepen their emotional investment in the relationship. Rebecca had fallen completely into his trap. She found herself checking her phone constantly for David's messages, smiling at his jokes, sharing intimate details about her fears and dreams that she hadn't told anyone else. She told him about her worry that Sophia was struggling more with the divorce than she let on, about her fear that she wasn't a good enough mother, about her secret dream of someday going back to school to become a nurse practitioner. David listened to everything with perfect empathy and encouragement, making Rebecca feel heard and valued in a way she hadn't experienced in years. "I think about you all the time," David texted one evening after they had been talking for 3 months. "I know we haven't met in person yet because of my work travel, but I feel closer to you than I've ever felt to another person. You're incredible, Rebecca. Strong and caring and beautiful inside and out. I can't wait until we can finally be together." Rebecca felt her heart skip as she read his words. For the first time since her divorce, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be loved by someone who truly saw and appreciated her. But love built on lies has no foundation, and Rebecca was about to learn that the man she had given her heart to was not just a stranger. He was a predator who had been patiently waiting for the perfect moment to reveal his true intentions. By late June, Rebecca's relationship with David had become the most important part of her daily routine. They talked every morning before she left for work, exchanged texts throughout her shifts at the hospital, and shared long, intimate phone conversations every evening after Sophia went to bed. He had become her closest confidant, the person she turned to when she had a difficult day with a patient, when she worried about Sophia's struggles at school, or when she simply needed someone to remind her that she was valued and loved. The loneliness that had consumed her for 3 years had been replaced by a warmth and happiness she thought might be too good to last. David's work as a marketing consultant seemed to require constant travel, which explained why they hadn't been able to meet in person despite 4 months of increasingly intimate conversations. He was always apologetic about missed opportunities, a client emergency in Portland, a family situation that required him to fly to his hometown in Ohio, a conference in Las Vegas that got extended at the last minute. But instead of raising suspicions, his explanations only made Rebecca more understanding and patient. "I hate that we keep missing each other," he would say during their nightly phone calls. But when we finally do meet, Rebecca, it's going to be perfect. What we have is so special, so real. I don't want to rush it and risk ruining something this beautiful." Their conversations had naturally evolved to become more intimate as the summer progressed. David would tell Rebecca how beautiful he thought she was, how much he admired her strength and compassion, how lucky he felt to have found someone who understood his heart so completely. "I love the way you laugh when you're really happy," he would say during their late-night calls. "I love how passionate you get when you talk about your patients. I love imagining what it will feel like to hold you, to wake up next to you, to be the person who gets to see you first thing in the morning before you put on your brave face for the world." Rebecca found herself responding to David's romantic words with increasing openness about her own desires and feelings. The divorce had left her feeling sexually invisible, like a woman whose body had been rejected and whose sensuality had died along with her marriage. But David made her feel desirable again, beautiful again, worthy of passionate love and physical intimacy. She began sharing her own fantasies about their future together, describing how much she missed being touched by someone who loved her, how much she longed for physical connection with a man who truly saw and appreciated her. On a warm Saturday evening in July, as thunderstorms rolled across the Denver skyline and Sophia was spending the weekend with her father, David brought up something during their phone call that made Rebecca's pulse quicken with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I've been thinking about us a lot lately," he said, his voice soft and intimate through the phone. "About how connected we are emotionally, about how much trust we've built between us, about how much I want to be close to you in every way possible. I know this might sound crazy, and please tell me if I'm overstepping, but I'd love to see you, really see you, and share myself with you in the same way." Rebecca felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew exactly what David was suggesting, and part of her wanted it desperately. She had been celibate for over 3 years, and the physical longing she had been suppressing was becoming harder to ignore with each passing week of intimate conversations. She missed being desired by a man, missed the feeling of being seen as sexually attractive, missed the intimacy of sharing her body with someone who claimed to love every part of her. I don't know, David," she whispered into the phone. "I've never done anything like that before. What if it's not secure? What if someone could see or record it somehow?" "Rebecca, sweetheart, you know I work with technology every day for my job." David's voice was gentle and reassuring. "I know exactly how to make sure our conversation stays completely private. There are secure apps that use end-to-end encryption, ways to connect that leave absolutely no digital trace. I would never ask you to do something that could put you at risk. You mean everything to me. I love you too much to ever let anything bad happen to you because of something I suggested. Those 3 words, I love you, hit Rebecca like a physical blow to her chest. It was the first time David had said them directly, and hearing them made her feel like she was floating above her own body. This wonderful man loved her, had chosen her above all others, wanted to share the most intimate parts of himself with her. How could she not trust him completely? How could she not show him that she loved him just as deeply? "But you promise me," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with emotion and desire. "Promise me that this stays between us, that no one will ever know about this except you and me. I have Sophia to think about, my job at the hospital, my reputation in the community. I promise you with everything I have," David replied, and Rebecca could hear what sounded like genuine emotion in his voice. "This is about us, about our love, about the connection we've built together. No one else exists when we're together, Rebecca. It's just you and me, and that's how it will always be. You're safe with me. You're loved with me. And after tonight, we'll be connected in a way that nothing can ever break." What Rebecca couldn't see was Carlos Rivera sitting in his Phoenix apartment, surrounded by 3 computer monitors displaying active conversations with other women, his phone already equipped with screen recording software that would capture every second of what was about to happen in perfect high-definition clarity. What she couldn't know was that this moment had been his goal from the very beginning, that every understanding word, every romantic gesture, every declaration of love had been carefully designed to lead her to this exact point of vulnerability. The video call lasted 18 minutes. For Rebecca, it was 18 minutes of feeling beautiful, desired, and deeply connected to the man she believed loved her completely. She shared herself with David in ways she hadn't shared with anyone since her marriage ended, feeling empowered by his words of appreciation and arousal, believing she was strengthening the emotional bond they had built over 4 months of constant communication. For Carlos, it was 18 minutes of collecting high-quality video footage that would serve as ammunition for the next phase of his plan. For 3 days after their intimate video call, David was more attentive and romantic than ever. He sent Rebecca flowers at the hospital with a card that read, "Thank you for trusting me with your beautiful heart and soul." He called her multiple times throughout each day, just to tell her how incredible she had been, how much their connection meant to him, how lucky he felt to have found someone willing to share herself so completely. Rebecca felt like she was walking on clouds, convinced that their relationship had reached a new level of intimacy and trust that would bond them together forever. Then, on Wednesday morning, everything changed. Rebecca was reviewing patient charts during her lunch break when her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen, but when she answered, the voice that came through was completely different from the warm, loving tone she had grown accustomed to. It was cold, businesslike, and utterly terrifying. "Well, well, Rebecca," the voice said, and she realized with growing horror that while it was definitely David speaking, he sounded like a completely different person. "I have to say, you put on quite a show the other night. 18 minutes of high-definition footage that I think your colleagues at the hospital would find very interesting. And I'm sure your daughter Sophia would love to see what Mommy does for fun when she thinks no one is watching." Rebecca felt like she was falling through space, her stomach lurching as her brain tried to process what she was hearing. What? What are you talking about? David, what's wrong with you? This isn't funny. You're scaring me." "My name isn't David, sweetheart," Carlos continued, enjoying the sound of panic in her voice, "and our relationship was never quite what you thought it was. But don't worry, this doesn't have to get messy. All I need from you is a small financial favor. Think of it as payment for keeping our little video private. I think $10,000 is a fair price for protecting your reputation and your daughter's innocence, don't you?" The words hit Rebecca like physical blows, each one stealing more of her ability to breathe or think clearly. This couldn't be happening. This had to be some kind of nightmare, or a cruel joke, or anything other than the devastating betrayal it appeared to be. "I don't have $10,000, she whispered into the phone, her voice barely audible. "I'm a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. I don't have savings. I can't just—" "Then you better figure it out," Carlos interrupted, his voice now completely devoid of any warmth or kindness. "Because if I don't receive that money within 1 week, your video becomes public. And trust me, Rebecca, I know exactly where to post it so that everyone in your world will see it. Your co-workers, your neighbours, your daughter's teachers and classmates' parents. Everyone will know what a slutty nurse does when she thinks no one is watching." Rebecca felt bile rising in her throat as the full scope of her situation became clear. The man she had fallen in love with, had trusted with her deepest secrets, had shared her body with, had never existed at all. She had been manipulated by a stranger who had seen her loneliness as an opportunity for exploitation, her vulnerability as a weakness to be weaponized against her. "Please," she sobbed into the phone, "please don't do this to me. I'll pay you what I can. I'll find a way to get some money. Just please don't put that video online." 1 week, Rebecca, $10,000. And if you're thinking about being clever, if you're thinking about going to the police or telling anyone about our arrangement, remember that I know where you work, where you live, where your daughter goes to school. I can destroy your life with a few clicks, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. The line went dead, leaving Rebecca alone in the hospital break room with the devastating realization that her search for love had led her into a trap that might destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. As she sat there shaking uncontrollably, surrounded by the sounds of a busy hospital and the normal activities of people whose lives hadn't just exploded into chaos, Rebecca began to understand that her nightmare was just beginning. If this part is making sense, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's really watching to this point. Rebecca didn't sleep for the next 4 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Carlos's voice threatening to destroy her life, saw her co-workers' faces when they discovered her secret, imagined Sophia's confusion and pain when other children showed her the video of her mother that everyone had seen. She moved through her shifts at the hospital like a ghost, mechanically checking on patients while her mind raced through increasingly desperate scenarios for finding $10,000 she didn't have. Her hands shook so badly while administering medications that her supervisor asked if she was feeling ill, and Rebecca had to excuse herself to the bathroom, where she threw up from the stress and panic that were consuming her from the inside out. Rebecca's financial situation was even more dire than she had initially realized. Her savings account contained exactly $437, money she had been setting aside for Sophia's birthday party next month. Her checking account had enough to cover their rent, utilities and groceries for the next 2 weeks, but nothing beyond the basic necessities of survival. She had deliberately avoided credit cards after her divorce, having seen too many single mothers drown in debt, which meant she had no access to quick cash through borrowing. Her retirement account from the hospital had perhaps $3,000, but early withdrawal would involve penalties and paperwork that would take weeks to process. Carlos called her every single day, his voice becoming more threatening with each conversation. "Time's running out, Rebecca," he would say, clearly enjoying the sound of her desperation. "I hope you're not planning to disappoint me, because the consequences will be very public and very permanent." When Rebecca tried to explain her financial limitations, tried to negotiate for more time or a smaller amount, Carlos would laugh and describe in graphic detail exactly where he planned to post her video and how he would make sure it reached every person in her professional and personal life. Desperate and running out of options, Rebecca began liquidating everything she could. She sold her grandmother's wedding ring to a pawn shop for $800, tears streaming down her face as she handed over the last piece of jewelry that connected her to her family's history. She listed her laptop, her television, and every piece of electronics she owned on online marketplaces, accepting ridiculously low offers from buyers who could sense her desperation. She worked extra shifts at the hospital until she was barely functioning from exhaustion, picking up overtime whenever it was available, and saying yes to every additional responsibility that came with extra pay. After 5 days of frantic effort, Rebecca had managed to scrape together $4,300. She called Carlos with the pathetic hope that her effort would earn some mercy, some recognition that she had tried her best to meet his impossible demands. "I have $4,300, she told him, her voice hollow with defeat. "It's everything I have in the world. Every possession I could sell, every extra hour I could work, every penny I could find. Please take it and leave me alone. I have nothing left to give you." Carlos's laughter was cruel and cold. "Oh, Rebecca, you sweet, stupid woman. This was never about the money. This was about power, about showing you exactly how helpless you really are. But since you've been such a good sport, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll take your pathetic $4,000 as a down payment, and you can pay me the remaining $6,000 next month. Think of it as a subscription service. You pay, your secret stays safe, and everyone stays happy." The realization that Carlos would never stop, that he would continue demanding money for the rest of her life, broke something fundamental in Rebecca's spirit. She wasn't just being blackmailed for one payment. She was being enslaved to a predator who would drain every resource she had and then demand more. Every dollar she earned, every sacrifice she made for Sophia, every hope she had for their future, was now at the mercy of a man who saw her pain as entertainment and her desperation as profit. Rebecca transferred the money to Carlos's account, but instead of relief, she felt only a deeper despair. She had given a stranger everything she had, and it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. She was trapped in a cycle of exploitation that would continue until she had nothing left to lose, except her life. Over the following weeks, as Carlos continued his threats and demands, Rebecca began having thoughts that terrified her, thoughts about how much simpler everything would be if she just disappeared. If she wasn't there to make payments anymore, maybe Carlos would leave Sophia alone. Maybe her sister Carmen would take Sophia in and give her the stable, secure life she deserved, far away from the shame and chaos that Rebecca had brought into their world. Rebecca started researching methods of suicide with the same methodical approach she brought to her nursing duties. She looked up information about overdoses, about car accidents that might appear unintentional, about ways to ensure that her death would look like anything other than what it really was. An escape from shame and terror that had become unbearable. She wrote letters to Sophia that she planned to leave behind, trying to explain her decision without revealing the truth about why she felt like she had no other choice. "Mommy loves you more than anything in the world," she wrote through tears that blurred her vision. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed, and the only way to protect the people we love is to go away forever." The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in late August. Sophia was at her father's house for their court-mandated visitation, which meant Rebecca was alone with her thoughts and her terror for the first time in weeks. Carlos had called earlier demanding another payment, threatening to post her video on social media platforms where Sophia's classmates would inevitably see it, describing in graphic detail how he planned to ruin both their lives if she didn't come up with more money. Rebecca sat in her empty house, surrounded by the bare spaces where she had sold her furniture to meet his previous demands, and realized that she couldn't survive another day of this psychological torture. Rebecca took every sleeping pill she had in her medicine cabinet, washing them down with the bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion that would never come. As the medication began to take effect, she felt a strange sense of peace for the first time in months. The constant fear was finally going to end. The shame was going to stop eating her alive from the inside out. Sophia would be better off without a mother who had been stupid enough to trust a predator with intimate images that could be used to destroy their lives forever. But fate, or perhaps Sophia's intuitive understanding that something was terribly wrong, intervened in a way that Rebecca had never expected. Sophia had been feeling anxious at her father's house, missing her mother and worrying about the changes she had noticed in their lives. The missing furniture, the cheap dinners, the way Rebecca seemed to be disappearing into herself more each day. She convinced her father to bring her home early, saying she had forgotten a school project that was due the next morning. Michael found Rebecca unconscious on their living room floor at 9:47 p.m., her breathing shallow and her skin cold to the touch. Sophia watched in horror as paramedics worked to save her mother's life, not understanding what had happened, but knowing instinctively that her world was falling apart. Rebecca survived. Barely. spending 3 days in the intensive care unit of the same hospital where she worked, while Sophia stayed with Carmen and asked questions that no one knew how to answer. It was Carmen who called the police, demanding to know what could have driven her strong, capable sister to attempt suicide. It was Detective Maria Gonzalez from the Denver Police Department's cybercrime unit who began investigating the financial irregularities in Rebecca's bank records, tracing the money transfers that had drained her accounts. And it was FBI Special Agent Jennifer Walsh who made the connection between Rebecca's case and a pattern of similar exploitation cases they had been tracking across multiple states. "Ms. Martinez," Agent Walsh said when she visited Rebecca in the hospital, "you're not alone in this. The person who did this to you has victims in 12 states that we know of. We've been building a case against him for 8 months, and your cooperation could help us put him away for decades. But more importantly, we can help you get your life back. What happened to you wasn't your fault. It was a carefully planned crime by a professional predator who has destroyed dozens of lives for profit." The investigation that followed revealed the shocking scope of Carlos Rivera's operation. He had been running romance scams and sextortion schemes for over 5 years, targeting vulnerable women across the country with a sophisticated network of fake profiles and emotional manipulation techniques. The FBI discovered evidence of over 200 victims, many of whom had paid him thousands of dollars, and at least 6 others who had attempted suicide as a result of his blackmail and psychological torture. Carlos was arrested at his Phoenix apartment in a raid that recovered computers filled with explicit images of his victims, detailed spreadsheets tracking their payments and personal information, and communications with other criminals involved in similar schemes. He was charged with wire fraud, computer fraud, extortion, and conspiracy, facing a potential sentence of over 40 years in federal prison. During his trial, the full scope of his predatory operation became public, revealing a level of calculated cruelty that shocked even experienced law enforcement officials. But justice, while satisfying, couldn't undo the damage Carlos had inflicted on his victims. Rebecca returned to work at the hospital 3 months after her suicide attempt, but the trauma of her experience had changed her in ways that time couldn't heal. She struggled with trust issues that affected every relationship in her life, jumping at unexpected phone calls and constantly worrying that her secret would somehow become public, despite Carlos's imprisonment. Sophia, now aware that her mother had tried to leave her forever, became clingy and anxious, requiring months of therapy to process her own trauma from that terrible night. Rebecca's financial recovery took even longer. The money she had paid to Carlos was never recovered, and rebuilding her savings while paying for therapy and legal expenses proved nearly impossible on her nurse's salary. She moved with Sophia into a smaller apartment, sold her car for a used model with higher mileage, and took on additional responsibilities at work to make ends meet. The shame of having been so thoroughly deceived continued to eat away at her self-esteem, even though she intellectually understood that she had been the victim of a sophisticated crime. The most difficult part of Rebecca's recovery was learning to forgive herself for the choices that had led to her victimization. In therapy sessions, she had to confront the reality that her desperate need for love and connection had made her vulnerable to a predator who specialized in exploiting exactly those human needs. She had to accept that wanting love, seeking companionship, and trusting someone who seemed genuine weren't character flaws. They were normal human desires that Carlos had weaponized against her. "What I want people to understand," Rebecca told Agent Walsh during Carlos's sentencing hearing, "is that this could happen to anyone. I'm an educated woman, a medical professional who deals with life and death situations every day. But when you're lonely and someone tells you exactly what you need to hear, when they seem to understand your heart in a way no one else has, it's easy to ignore the warning signs. These predators are professionals at manipulation. They study their victims like scientists, and they know exactly how to make intelligent people make terrible decisions." Carlos Rivera was sentenced to 37 years in federal prison, but the judge's words during sentencing provided little comfort to his victims. "The defendant has shown a level of calculated cruelty that is almost incomprehensible," Judge Patricia Chen said. "He didn't just steal money from his victims. He stole their ability to trust, their sense of safety, and in several cases, nearly their lives. The psychological damage he inflicted will last far longer than any prison sentence. Rebecca Martinez wanted love, but she found betrayal. She sought connection, but she discovered exploitation. She trusted a stranger with her heart, and that stranger nearly destroyed her life completely. Her story is not unique. It's one of thousands that law enforcement officials encounter every year as romance scams and sextortion schemes become increasingly sophisticated and devastating. According to the FBI, sextortion is a rapidly growing crime that has resulted in multiple suicides among victims who felt they had no way to escape the cycle of blackmail and shame. Rebecca survived her encounter with Carlos Rivera, but her life was forever changed by the experience. She learned that healing from this kind of betrayal is not just about financial recovery. It's about rebuilding your ability to trust yourself and others after someone has weaponized your most basic human needs against you. She learned that seeking love and connection are not weaknesses to be ashamed of, but fundamental human desires that predators exploit precisely because they are so universal. Today, Rebecca works with law enforcement agencies to educate other potential victims about romance scams and sextortion schemes. She speaks at community events and online safety seminars, sharing her story despite the personal cost because she knows that awareness is the best defense against predators like Carlos. If my experience can prevent even one person from going through what I went through, she says, then maybe something positive can come from the worst period of my life. The FBI reports that over 20 minors have committed suicide because of sextortion scams in recent years, and the numbers for adult victims are likely much higher, but often go unreported due to shame and fear. Rebecca's story reminds us that in our digital age, not everyone online is who they claim to be, and the search for love can sometimes lead to predators who view human vulnerability as an opportunity for profit. If you or someone you know is experiencing online exploitation, please reach out for help. You are not alone, and it is not your fault. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, in a world where technology can be used to harm, the most powerful weapon we have is awareness and the courage to speak up when something feels wrong.